Hello, and welcome back to another round of Forgotten Op 2. And we're going to play Seelow Heights in a terrible attacking team, so it's gonna be a huge disaster, which is why I decided to go for our team. Or as I like to call it, Team Kill Simulator. Let's see how it works out. How many subs? I don't know. 500. Okay. Oh, there's the flak. Correct. I made this. Okay, there's the flak gun. So... now, artillery is extremely boring, which means I should probably do like a podcast or something. Normally, I guess I could talk about the historical background of the map, but I think I have a video about that already up. Okay, we got the mana. So now we have to hold it, which is the true test of Russia. 11 in squads, including the artillery dude. Yeah. Oh wait, no. On the German team? Okay, let's already try to take out some of those guns up there. Although I think that one is already taken out. And yeah, no, it is. Okay, never mind. But they have taken back our mana. Because even though that flag zone is the most open of them all, the Germans always manage to sneak back in. Really need to be careful with the team killing, yeah? Anyway, what could I talk about? The thing is, this will go up, like, next year. So I can't actually talk about, like, current events or anything. Pretty sure there will be some kind of terror attack before, so I'm just gonna talk about that, I guess. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. And it's a huge tragedy, and all thoughts and prayers are going out and so on. Well, not prayers, I'm an atheist, but still, thoughts. Thoughts are totally going out, and I hope they are enough. Okay, there we go. And of course that, bam. And of course that terrorist attack was probably done by some kind of Islamist fuckwit. So that means that some right-wing party in Europe or wherever will win the next election. So I guess I can talk about that. I mean, often you can predict these things, can't you? Oh, that's one interesting thing. Like, everybody was shocked when Donald Trump won that election. Even though to me it was always like, people said, he's never going to win, and I'm like, well, have you looked at the polls? It's actually close. He can totally win just from a mathematical standpoint. Not to mention that Hillary Clinton is, well... Now that's kind of the thing is that when talking about, you know, that whole debacle, they're always concentrating on Donald Trump, asking, you know, why was this weirdo elected? When really, I think the question going forward should be, why wasn't Hillary Clinton elected, or rather, why do the Liberals apparently not have the backing anymore of shit, too far away, of the population in their countries. Because in the past, it was basically the opposite, right? You had the Liberals, or for example the Democrats in... okay, there's a house in the way or a tree. Of course totally planned, so that the Germans don't lose their AA capability. No, but in the past it was, you had the Liberals, or for example Social Democrats in Germany. And these were like the party of the people of the working class, right? And then you had the center-right party, like the Republicans or the CDU. And they were like the pro-business, middle class and, you know, upper middle class and rich people party, right? And that's how it worked, and worked relatively well, all things considered. And today it's like switched. Or, well, it's not really switched today. Both establishment parties, you know, major establishment parties, obviously some have more, but both are kind of pro-business and pro-rich people at the end of the day. Which is, the historical background to that is the 1990s, because back then, as we all probably remember, history ended. Yeah. You might not be aware of this, but back then people thought that it was literally the end of history, because the Cold War was over, though the thinking was that basically one system of government had emerged victorious, namely liberal democratic capitalism, and this had now been shown to be the perfect system of government, and going forward everybody would one after another switch to that, and that would be the end of all war and so on. Many people did actually believe that in the post-Cold War, you know, post-Berlin Wall fall euphoria. Now, from today's perspective, I mean, that sounds kind of stupid, but people believe that. I mean, of course, that dream is dead since 9/11 at the latest, you know. Turns out history is still going horribly, as always. But the effect that is had is that basically both the center parties in most countries kind of converged on each other, in that they all turned to the right on economic matters. For example, the welfare state in most Western countries was destroyed basically by leftists, Bill Clinton and Gerhard Schröder in Germany, for example. Because, you know, that whole, you know, socialism thing is so out. I mean, they lost, the whole communist thing didn't work, they lost the Cold War, so yeah, let's get rid of that, we don't need that anymore. And instead, so the idea was, you know, the communists had the stupid idea in Germany of socialism with a human face. They basically would have socialism but kind of nice, and, you know, not so many human rights violations and blah blah blah. So the dream became capitalism with a human face. You have capitalism, but you kind of have a, like, welfare state. That might have been stupid, I almost didn't put that dude. Okay, good. The other guy took him out though. But with the welfare state you kind of soften the blow of it, you know. That was the new dream. And even that dream kind of course, went down the drain. So basically the welfare state was dismantled. And today, basically what the left today, and I wouldn't even call them left, let's call them, you know, actually not looking too bad. We do have the bridge due to backcappers, maybe we will get the trenches soon. Anyway, but the thing is that what can laughably called the left these days, you know, establishment liberals and leftists, basically what they're doing is they don't touch economy at all. They are basically capitalists, like complete capitalists. But they like they like to work towards social equality by stuff like anti-racism, anti-homophobia, anti-sexism, which is fine. I mean, nobody in his right mind is really against that. But it kind of hides what some of the true problems of inequality are, which are economic in nature, not because of race and so on. And this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump was elected, in my opinion. Because the thing is this, leftists like victims these days. You know, like a victim in a sense of somebody who is completely without fault. Ooh, I just took out the fucking Yak Panther. You see, this guy was completely a victim. He couldn't do anything about that. And that's what people like these days. Like, the perfect example of a victim would be the Jews who got killed in the Holocaust. Because they were targeted because of something that they had no control over, their religious affiliation, or, in the mind of the Nazis, their race. And they couldn't do anything against it. Basically, a whole kind of government machine was turned against them just because of that, you know, fact. Alright? So, perfect victim. And the thing with the victim is, they're useful for political maneuvering because they're completely passive in the mind of the people liking them, right? The Jews didn't do anything to deserve it, they couldn't do anything against it, they're victims, basically. So, let's say I'm black, and because of that I don't get a job just because I'm black, then I'm a victim of racism. And that's a nice, simple example. Now, of course, in reality things aren't as simple. Which is the problem. Like, for example, and this is the thing, you know, like liberals today, they want people to be victims so they can have their simple worldview. That's I don't think those are Russians. And as soon as that is threatened, they're kind of out of arguments, really. One example would be because even people who are legitimately victims of racism at the same time can also be perpetrators, right? So that whole kind of ideology falls down there. Just as an example, like in Germany, Muslims are victims of racism. Now this is true. For example, I'm sitting in an apartment right now, relatively new one that I got, and when I got it, I thought, oh shit, because this is a university town, so people want apartments all the time, and usually it's a giant pain in the ass. But I got this one really quickly, and I asked the dude, what's going on? Why did I get this so quickly? That must have been lucky. And he's like, yeah, well, but the other people who applied were all Turks. And I'm like, oh, great, you know. So obviously they're victims of racism there, but at the same time, I don't think anybody could deny that within Islam, women are disadvantaged and ah shit, no, that was the other dude. Ooh, that was lucky. Women are disadvantaged and there's systemic not racism, well, racism maybe as well, but in my opinion, mostly like systemic sexism. Right? So, this makes the whole thing a lot more complicated. Now, back to the whole victim thing. What this also means is that some people who are kind of, in some cases, victims, don't actually register as victims to the modern establishment liberal, because they are victimized in an economic manner. For example, the so-called Rust Belt in the US, you know, those central areas where basically almost no economy is taking place because, like, all the factories have gone. Now, these are the people that often voted for Trump, and who Hillary Clinton, in her infinite wisdom, called, deplorables, which she could do, because to her they are useless. I mean, what do they do for the system? You know, the capitalist doesn't care where he produces his stuff, you know, as long as it's cheap. And it's not cheap to produce in the USA, but it's cheap to produce in Thailand or whatever, or in Indonesia, where people are easier to exploit. Damn it. Now, the thing with these people in the Rust Belt is, they're kind of victims here, but they're not the kind of victims the liberal likes, because for one thing they're white, so it's not their race that is the reason they're victimized, even though they often like to claim that in their stupidity, but it's not the case. The reason they're victimized is simply because they're not useful. But that fact is what liberals these days are blind to. In fact, I believe that we're kind of going towards a weird, let's call it, state of almost fascism. Let's call it like a... Nice, okay, we got that back at least. A kind of colorful, nice fascism, you know? Where everybody is equal based on their race and their sexuality and blah blah blah. But if you're not economically useful, you're basically fucked. and you're basically without power and nobody in the political sphere cares about you. You know, like Hillary Clinton with the Rust Belt dudes. Now, obviously, in case somebody misunderstands me here, obviously Donald Trump doesn't really care about them either. He made lots of promises, most of them stupid. But the thing is, he actually at least acted like he cared. You know, every good politician knows that you have to do that. You have to at least act like you care, and they didn't even bother to do that. You know, at least if a large part of your population is basically useless to you, don't act like this as well. And that's number one. This idea of victims and who they are. Okay. And you can see that in basically every Western country. Like in Germany, the right-wing party, the AfD, is mostly voted for in the East, especially in like rural areas where after the collapse of socialism, basically nothing is going on. Like, nobody wants to be there. These are actually actively losing population, and no, not to Islamic terrorist attacks, but simply because people are moving away. And the people who are moving away are the ones who maybe, you know, can get a university degree and so on. So yeah. And nobody, obviously no politician cares, because they're not making anybody any money. And that's really the only thing that counts today. Now you might say, okay, and this is the second reason why the right-wingers gain so much traction today. Well, you might say, well, but not only like economically disadvantaged losers, to put it in a bit of a harsh term, voted for them, middle-class people as well. And that's true. And now here's the second thing, is that there's a shift in ideology in... I was probably a bit too far, huh? Oh, did I get a team call? Hard to tell. There's a shift of ideology today, which also started in the 90s, which went hand in hand with the dissolution of the welfare state. And... nice. It took a bit, but okay. In that, have you ever noticed how we think more and more economically? Like in the past, people who thought economically were usually like, you know, people who had good reason to do that, like capitalists, you know. They are literally there to make money. So obviously they think economically, but today everything basically has to make a profit. Even a school, even a state, everything has to make a profit. And this wasn't always the case. This is a relatively new development. And this is more and more also seeping into our personal lives and, and personal ideology. Where we more and more judge people and... wait, are those ours? Okay, I'm confused. 1 second. These people there, are these Germans or ours? They seem like ours attacking... Okay, nice. Okay, good. Where was I? Oh yeah, right. Economic thinking. We more and more judge people, relationships and so on economic grounds. You know, what do I get out of it? Can it make me a profit? Not necessarily in the money sense, but generally. This is how society is developing. And if you look at, I mean, many people call these new right-wing parties Nazis, and I don't really like that. For one thing, because Nazi these days is a really kind of, what's it called, fuck. How did I even manage to do that? Because Nazi is today a very emotionally charged term. I mean, nobody likes being called a Nazi, obviously. Nobody really calls himself a Nazi except like really weird weirdos. Nobody likes to think of himself as a Nazi. I'm not firing at that anymore, too much shit going on. Okay, what's that? Oh, nice, King Tiger. Oh, a bit too low, huh? Nobody likes to think of themselves as a Nazi, and also in terms of just what it means. Their politics aren't really Nazi-like. I mean, they're right-wing, obviously, but for one thing, they lack a certain collectivism. They're as extremely individualist in a way. They're more like national capitalists, really. And the people who vote for them are usually those who really internalize this economic thinking that I was mentioning earlier. Oh, good. And the thing is that liberals, as I said, the liberals today, leftists today, establishment leftists or whatever, are basically capitalists. And they actually play into their hands as well. Like, when the whole... I can't see him, okay, it's going further. When the whole, what's it called? The whole, refugee thing happened in Germany. What the German government said back then was that many or most of the refugees were like, what's it called? Doctors and stuff, you know, like, educated people. Now this was wrong on two counts. For one thing, it was a lie, which is always bad to lie to your people. Secondly, it was the kind of lie that is like, yeah, you could probably figure it out, you know, it's not a very... it was obviously not the case. I mean, nobody in his right mind believed it. But what really the big problem was is that this kind of confirmed what many people are thinking these days due to that, you know, economic stuff. Which is that, yeah, we're taking these refugees because they are useful to us in some way. That is even a consideration, you know, the economic usefulness. This shows how society's views on that matter are changing. Because the only thing they could think of to kind of sell this to the German population was by saying, well, you know, the people who are coming here, these are people who we can use in our economy. Maybe there are doctors who will save your life someday or some bullshit. So that's the second big thing, is that there has been, and of course this is all in the interest of the ruling classes who are, you know, who need that economic thinking to maintain their power. So that's kind of the second reason here. Or was it already the third? No, I think the second. This economic thinking that has been propagated. I still remember when they did the whole hard forcing in Germany, you know, the new, more restrictive kind of welfare system. That's a Stuck or a Hetzer, huh? Come on, one more. Oh, he bails out. Okay, I destroyed the Stuck though. I still remember when they implemented that, there was at the same time this weird media campaign where they showed a lot of like lazy people, you know, who like are on welfare but they live the high life on Mallorca or some bullshit, you know, just to beat it into the population's head, you know, people on welfare are lazy, you are better than them. And that kind of thinking is what bites them in the ass now, because it leads directly to these more extreme views of the new right wing. And then the third reason is... Okay, 1 second. The third reason is that many of the tactics, because the establishment leftists, they still care about things like, you know, fighting against racism, more rights for, like, homosexuals or whatever, which again, fine with me, I don't care. I just think these policies are fine. I mean, I would never vote against that, because why not? But that in itself tells you how harmless these are. They don't really change society, right? Okay, so now gay people can marry in Germany. How many people are actually gay? How many gay people actually want to marry? You know, how many people are affected by this? You know? So instead of doing economic reforms or even like really strong economic measures helping out the general working class and so on, they do this stuff, which are basically special interest things that might be right but aren't all that important. But okay, my point is that the tactics they use to transform society in that way, namely political correctness, have kind of become a new kind of 1 second, of oppressiveness, but not in the sense that many right-wingers claim. Like, they're always whining, oh, it's fascism, I can't call people niggers anymore, oh no. It's like, go fuck yourself, don't do that for one thing. And also, it's like, every society actually has some kind of taboo, it's completely fine, like, grow up. No, that's not what I mean. But what I mean is that, okay, in human societies, when there's different classes of people, there's usually very easy ways to tell who's in which class. And usually it's something stupid and simple like clothing, right? If you can afford a certain type of very expensive clothing, you're rich. You know, that kind of thing. Or you rented it these days. But okay. And, but some are a bit more subtle, like language, for example. Just like a historical example, like in Prussia back in the day, like in Frederick the Great's day, the peasants spoke German, and the upper class spoke French, like the nobility. You know, that's a very crass example, of course, but it can be more subtle. Like, and I think political correctness, in a way, has become, in its most extreme examples, has become a way of signaling class. Because, I mean, let's face it, if you really want to keep up with what is politically correct today, you basically need a university degree these days. And a university degree in something really useless. So you need to have the time and resources to commit to that kind of thing. You know, you need to be able to understand, I don't know, like Judith Butler's performativity theory or whatever in fashion today in universities. I don't even know. I have been out of university for a bit now. So you need to be able to understand that. So political correctness and being able to use, you know, all the correct terms has become kind of a thing of signaling I'm better than you are. You know, I'm above you. Just to give you an interesting example, while we're waiting for a new target, back might have been 2 years ago or something, there was this video where a woman filmed herself going through, it was like a mildly viral video, going through New York or some major American city, and then she was being harassed by men, right? They, what's it called? They catcalled her and whistled, so you know what I mean, right? And so obviously liberals like this, because obviously this woman was a victim. Little callback of racism. Trying to hit that stock. Not racism, of sexism. By being catcalled and harassed by misogynist men. Okay, so far so good. Now the thing is that there was at least one liberal weirdo who actually called her out for racism. Because, get this, because many of the people who did that were black or Latino. Or most of them, at least. And so this shows two things. For one thing, what I mentioned earlier is that they like a victim, but as soon as it gets complicated, the whole kind of ideology breaks down a bit. Because victims also victimize, and there goes the fucking stock. We might actually win this, which surprises me, because this is very hard for the Russians. But I don't, probably jinx it now, but yeah, it's hard. Can I get that flag? Probably not, it's too far away, huh? Yeah, that's as far as it goes. I might be some kind of genius that I protected the German main like this. But okay, back to the topic. So they said she was racist because of those Latinos and black people who harassed that woman. Now, obviously this is stupid, but not only in the way you might be thinking. So I already told you, victims and so on, blah blah blah. But the second thing here is that if you are the kind of woman who is interested in that type of feminism and so on, you're probably some middle-class woman who manages to get into university and is intellectual enough to understand all these theories that are around today. So, and as we probably all know, the middle class always wants to set themselves apart from the underclasses and rather want to be like the upper classes of the society. That's just like a general rule. However, if you're the kind of educated middle-class woman, you can't really do that. You can't really, put your nose up at all those poor people, because on some level you know that's bullshit. Now, political correctness allows you to do just that, alright? Because obviously these people who whistled after her and so on, the kind of people who do that are usually lower class people, and lower class people are usually, like in the US, blacks, Latinos and so on. So that makes sense, but So my point is that allows you to look down on them, not because they are poor or in a lower class, because, you know, as an establishment liberal, you don't really believe in all that Marxist bullcrap with a class system and so on. But it allows you to look down upon them because they're politically incorrect. They're misogynist. They don't know how to act towards women, which is something that people could also have said, like, in the 19th century, right? Oh, they're not gentlemen-like. It's the same thing, see? Like, in the 19th century, if you were an upper-class person, you had a code of behavior that made you a gentleman, as opposed to all the riffraff who had to work in the factory. Today, if you're an upper or middle-class person, you know what's politically correct. You know how to not be misogynist, you know how to not be racist. Lower-class people don't know that, and they don't really have a way of finding out, because, you know, if you actually have to work for a living, and maybe you have to work several jobs in this economy, it's not so easy to keep up with all the latest gender theories and so on. And so that allows you to be, at the same time, looking down, you can be a liberal, and at the same time look down upon people who are in a lower class than you. So, and that is what I say when I mean the third reason for Trump's victory and generally the new right-wingers is that political correctness and also what it kind of stands for, what it's supposed to achieve these days, has become a new way of oppression and of looking down on people. So yeah, I don't think we have much time left. I don't think we will win, but maybe we will. We have a lot of people in apartments, and I'm kind of get so raped. Anyway, got away. Oh, there it is. Some brave soul keeps... no, they got the church. Yeah, okay, we lost. But that was close. That was a very close round. I kind of feel bad now for playing artillery instead of playing infantry. I might have actually, like... Oh, okay, the react Panther got taken out. I might have actually been able to do something here, but, well... At least I got a nice podcast out of it, so now please all go into the comment section and tell me how brilliant I am with my analysis of modern politics and how everybody except me is an idiot. Yep. Maybe one last kill. One last massive team kill. Okay. Yeah, this map is pretty hard for the Russians. That being said, I actually did do some rebalancing on it. I made the German tanks respawn slower, and the Germans don't have Nebelwerfer anymore. That's for the next patch, of course. Anyway, I hope you kind of enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching. Have a nice day.